So it's 8 o'clock. Good morning, all, and it's good to see you here at the intersection. We've started just last week a series on community organizing and engagement. And we started last week with Strong Cities Network. And earlier, before everyone signed on, Billy even said, that was really good. It was like, a real, what did you call it, Billy?
Good start. Where's
It
the
was
rest
a
of the
good
story?
start. Yeah, where's the rest of this story? So that's the point of this series, that we're going to be going through a story, um, more than a story, lots of information. And the hope with the series too is that this might be fine-tuned and edited into somewhat of an educational piece for anyone, anywhere, I suppose, but in San Antonio in particular, that any San Antonian could look at and get a broader yet deeper perspective on community organizing and engagement. So some tools and some reasoning, some examples. So that's the hope of this series. And putting it together carefully, uncertain exactly how it's going to look in the end run, but that's what community organizing and engagement is about. Not certain the end run exactly always, but we're putting it together the best we can. And so, we're practicing, we are right now and always have been practicing as we gather community organizing and engagement. So we're doing it right now. And we all do it in other ways that we may not be aware of. But that's why we're doing this. To allow some time for others to get into this Zoom this morning early. Are there any announcements before we kind of jump in? Well, I want to announce and kind of wake us up. I know, always the beginning of a new year is like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, whatever it is, those resolutions. But also, it's kind of, a moment in time where we're like, okay, what's happening in the world and where are my priorities and things? So um, tomorrow, yes, tomorrow, the 10th of January is the official beginning of Dream Week San Antonio. It runs January 10th through January 26th. It is partnered with and aligns with all the city's MLK activities. The theme for Dream Week is We Are Neighbor. So everything you're going to discover, we're going to discover in that all those 200 plus events. It's about neighboring. And the theme for the MLK Commission work is together. Let's do this together. We are the dream. So I think we can all see how being neighbor is the dream. It is the community organizing and engagement and the necessity for doing that work together. So that's a big announcement to invite all of us to go into Dream Week's event calendar. I will confess, I spent 2 hours there trying to discern the things that I most need and want to attend for personal and professional reasons, right? And I am now also going through that and one more kind of filter down of how could we, through these offerings, grow together more collaboratively and in more connection and more engagement. So next week, and we're working on it now, but next week I'll put out kind of a listing of events and you, I hope we'll all be able to, by looking at them, see a line of connection of how this could strengthen us by attending some of these things and knowing these things. Off the top of my head, there's one on housing that I think will be very important. There's one on human flourishing and neighboring. And those are going to be 6 stories from 6 women, and how their personal life stories have been um, reflect human flourishing and the need for it. Um, there's going to be interfaith worship and connections, a youth summit, and of course, there's the MLK March. So my plan is to send out to our entire network um, a kind of a listing of things that connect to the kind of work that we've been doing. And hopefully that will be helpful to many of us to go, well, I don't have time for all of these. None of us will. But, this one really resonates, and I can see how it's connected to the others. Seeing connection is very important. So that's my big announcement. And January is always a big month. And whether we're aware of it or engaged in it, one of the first steps in compassion is awareness, to be aware. And so I think if we're at least able in our mutual work together to be aware of what is happening, that's our first step. It's always a first step. Even when you took it 20 years ago, it's a first step yet today. So that's my big announcement, and I will be sending that information out, and we will go from there. So again, last week, we heard from Eric Roseanne about the Strong Cities Network. And it was a good intro into community organizing and engagement. But where do we continue to go into our next steps? So you have me today, and I invited everyone to come old school and bring a piece of paper and a pen. So, and this isn't like homework, and this is for you, that piece of paper and a pen. If you end up doodling on it and you're proud of it, you could post it on your fridge for any children or grandchildren, but that's not the plan either. So, I invite all of you as we begin to think of a current concern and or effort that in some way you're involved in, connected to, aware of. It can be any of those things, or something that you might want to be more involved in, right? So on that piece of paper, to name that, and it might have a name, right? Like one of our collaboratives is EcoSA, the Environmental Collaborative of San Antonio. So if that was a thing, and it is, but if that was the thing I was naming, that would be what I write on the paper for myself. So I invite you to do the same thing. And if you don't know about EcoSA, then you could, but you're really concerned about environment and sustainability, write down environment sustainability. Okay? It's not rocket science. And then what I hope to do is go through a couple information slides that look at community organizing, that also look at some challenges in terms of the work we do. And then I would like to quickly share with you 4 examples, 1 local, 1 state, 1 national, and 1 international. And I hope in the process that we'll be able to see community organizing and engagement within it, and that somehow it also informs what you have on that piece of paper. So along the way, if there are things that you see that speak to what's on your piece of paper, I encourage you to write that down, or ideas that you have. That piece of paper is your part of today's At the Intersection. So the first thing that I want to look at is a part and kind of the next step from what we heard last week. I'm praying so far I got the right slide queued up. Okay, can everyone see this slide that's entitled, What is Community Engagement?
Yep.
Yeah.
Got
We
it.
can see it. Great. So these slides came through a webinar that Strong Cities Network put together and was when I encountered Strong Cities, right? By the way, since last week, San Antonio is becoming a member of the Strong Cities Network. The mayor said yes to it, and so we've already got movement in that direction. That too is an example of community engagement. And I think one of the things is to recognize what we're talking about when we talk community. It's all those things. It's our neighborhood, it's our city, it's our state, it's the country. It's a compound word of common unity, how we come together. So, but engaging that is a process that involves local populations in decision making to strengthen local capacities, structures, ownership, and to improve transparency, accountability, and optimal resource allocations. So, this definition, as you can see, focuses locally because that's also how community engagement and organizing works and begins, where you are, where we are. And the work that we all do, as we know, is right here in San Antonio. Now let's see if I can get to the next slide easily. Here we go. I mentioned last week, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but then they gave an example from Philadelphia that's been working on civil rights and how they engage the community and organize community around that. Just like I hope to give 4 examples today. But the 2 slides I want to look at more carefully is the importance of engaging communities through partnership. So partnering, I love the graphic here, and we all know what that is. That's how we look here at the intersection. And then there's like an assessment and openness, and they just told in Philadelphia kind of the steps that they took, but it was through partnership. So whatever's on your page, your piece of paper, partnership and connection with others. Um, Even if you're just beginning, it's with at least one other person, right? And then larger. This, though, is the main slide that I wanted to look at that they brought us, that I think also informs everything that we're all doing. So the objectives of community engagement is to promote social cohesion. It's to bring together, that common humanity. So social cohesion. How do we come together in terms of the environment as a people? On our street, in our congregation, at our work. And then to create a system for effective problem solving. Then how do we go about then working together in this developing relational cohesion? How are we going to approach that? So it's addressing systems as well. And then out of that engagement, it promotes even more coordination, resourcing. I mean, that's what brought sacred.org into being. The community said, we need to know how to get our hands on resources. So what are the resources available? How do people get, connected to those resources? How can we more efficiently and effectively do that so that we can optimize? If I'm working by myself, my optimization level is very small. But if I'm working with another person or a collaborative of people, suddenly it's synergistic and it's also exponential. So there's more optimization. And what happens in this, and this one is a tough one, or could be, but promoting trust, transparency, and accountability. I also see in here the importance of compassion and the awareness in this work of everybody trying to do their best effort. And so, along with transparency, is this kind of honesty that can be sometimes difficult for us. We might pull back a bit from what we might be thinking or knowing. And because we don't want to hurt somebody. Um, we want to be nice, right? The key is kindness, that there is this thing, this transparent, should be more transparent thing. And I'm saying it out loud because I love you. And this work is important. So this one, community trust, we all know is crazy important. And then this next stage, and this was very much more spiral. This isn't a line like it looks on this page. It could be a circle, but life, is more than two dimensions. So when we think about these components in community organizing, we could think more as a spiral. In my mind, it all looks like DNA. And why wouldn't it? Because that's the basic element, of all things. So these types of elements are like spiral strands in DNA that also cross connect. So it's not a line of effort. And again, that could be, a tough one because that means we have learned how to be linear in our brains, but how do we start to see in spirals and connectivity? And it can look a lot messier, right? So I wanted to share that, and that this all comes straight out of the work we heard about last week. The next slide that I hope I've queued up well enough to share without stumbling. And of course, I don't see it. Hang in there. I'll keep looking. Two as a slide. Comes also with research. I really want to find this. I had it. I'm trying to remember. It's here. Here we go. I found it. Hang on. I brought these up before, but many of you know that right when you want it, it's a little bit hard to find. Here we go. So we've had lots of research, and there is lots of research. In fact, next week we're going to be hearing about action research from Virginia Mata, who's now the lead of social justice with the Archdiocese. But she did her PhD work on community organizing, specifically here in San Antonio, but also in connection with action research. So the research I'm sharing with you now, do you see a slide that says Muhammad Ali at the top? Yes, awesome. So some national research that has been happening and is launching this month, specifically January 16th, which is next week. It's going to launch in New York City, but it has come out of the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, Kentucky, and done in partnership with 12 cities across the country. San Antonio is one of those. And so the mayor here and some of us here have been working with this research and algorithm that they have been utilizing. And this is just one piece of that research that's coming out that I wanted to just quickly look at, because it also, as you can see, has some dense paragraphs and in them. So we're not going to read every paragraph. But what the Ali Index is measuring is the compassion It's a measurement of compassion in these 12 locations and how it can then inform our work. So again, there's a lot of information in this index, and we're going to be looking more at it down the road. But I like how at least this slide parses it in terms of self, individuals, groups, the community, the nation. And then it provides us in that research what the barriers are in terms of our compassion with ourself, our barrier with others. But then it also provides the motivation. What motivates compassion in those spaces? And how can research then inform our community organizing and engagement processes by knowing more about how humans work, right? So we'll just look quickly here at self as an example. Poor well-being, right? Often linked to diminished health and wellness resources, a major barrier to compassion with ourselves. And as we go forward, then there's a reduced ability to feel empathy and care for others because our own needs are not being met. That's a barrier for each of us. But on a positive note, in the motivation, investment in mental health resources is notably high right now. There's a movement of teaching all of us about self-care and mindfulness in schools, in business, where we're working. So that can provide us some motivation, but it also can provide us with some resources as individuals, right? Of where to go and how to strengthen our own self-care. I'm going to jump down like to local community, but research like the Belonging Barometer highlights a growing crisis as higher rates of loneliness and lack of belonging, particularly among young people, lead to increased community disengagement, aggression, and the lowest levels of charitable giving in nearly 3 decades. Do you see how this is informing us? But then on the other side of it, there is the rise of compassionate civic engagement, which we are about right now. That's what we're doing. But it's evident in microcultures taking local action, for congregations that are flipping into housing, taking local action from citizens assembling around environment and climate policies, national policies to the community level. Religious and community organizations are stepping in to provide essential services. These things are happening. And one of my local example that I'm going to give is just that. And I hope it provides hope. So for me, when I look at this list and these motivations, the leap over this barrier, right? The leap for me is hope. That's what, but with the engagement, but with research and information, for me, it provides hope and it strengthens a community to continue further down the road. Sacred.org, for example, gives me lots of hope. It is like the 24/7, 365 largest compassionate effort we have in San Antonio. If you can see it that way, but that's what it is. And that runs again 24 hours a day. So I can literally sleep better at night knowing that somebody at 2 a.m. could still find resources. That helps all of us. So now to the examples. So they're going to be quick. And if you want to know more about them, you know how to email me. So the local one that I hope that will be easy to show you and share. I need to get rid of this one. Is a congregation, the Lutheran Church of Good Shepherd, that's in District 3 here in San Antonio, which is southeast San Antonio. Very large, active congregation, as many were in their heyday, right? Of hundreds, if not thousands of people, but has dwindled over the years because people have moved to other parts of the city, or whether it's relevancy, or there's lots of reasons, right? So my role though this morning though is to hopefully share with you the community engagement and development. So this effort, I'm just showing you now the list of partners that have developed there. This is community organizing. This is community engagement out of a location that was almost not breathing. And I know we all know some of those. It might be even the thing that's on your piece of paper. And you can see here partnerships that you might not normally think would be partnered with a congregation. Like here's a group, although it seems in another sense very obvious, but they teach people how to fish, the Finn Attic Anglers. A basketball group. They now have 4 worshiping communities there: Spanish, French, Congolese, and English. This is within a congregation that basically has 12 members in it. The Sacred's going to have a kiosk there that the local community can use, partnership with SA Sports, their a licensed childcare service. Now, the community outreach model that they're using is a model that will be led by the teenagers, the youth, and will be voiced forward by the teenagers. This is the form of community organizing that this group of partnerships will be using. And it's not rocket science, it's putting a pin on the map and drawing a small concentric circle around that geography. And young people are then going to go door to door, meeting the families and other young people and inviting them into this community, and then into weekly gatherings of asking young people, what is the dream for your life? And connecting people who can help mentor and navigate with that young person into the future that they dream for themselves. But then they will also be asked about their community. What does this community that we're living in right now need? And how can we work on that together to meet that need? And then that's how the community organizing works there. And then another small concentric circle is drawn around that pinpoint, and they reach out to that circle. And then later, another small concentric circle. It's not rocket science. So that's the local example. The state example, I don't have a slide, and you're probably thinking, great, we don't have to go looking for it. The state example, we heard from Texas Impact in a series, I don't know, was that a month or so ago? It was right before the presidential election is when we were hearing more about Texas Impact, and we have a recording of that time. So if you want to look back into the recordings at the intersection, there is one there about Texas Impact. We are all aware that with the new national federal administration coming forward, there are some challenges in terms of immigration and refugees. No one knows for certain yet. It's so much more uncertain, but there are organizations, the Immigration and Refugee Collaboratives in San Antonio, who are, of course, trying to prepare and are concerned, right? And they're trying to get ready and be knowledgeable. But one of the decisions that has been made, specifically within the Interfaith Welcome Coalition within immigration and refugee work, that for like the advocacy work going forward, that they're going to connect with Texas Impact, which is a statewide collaboration and institution. So they have discerned that that will be their strongest movement in terms of community engagement and organizing, is to work more closely, more intentionally with Texas Impact. So that is my state model, right? The national model, and I'm trying to remember now what the national model was. I know the international one. It might have been, I think it was. The national model was the Ali Index. and how that has come together. That one is an and both. It provided some information, but and we're going to be getting that soon. So when that flows out, you know, I'll be sending it out and we'll be looking at it and we'll be working with it. And how can we tweak our work to be more in line with what we know helps us to optimize our work together. The international one is right here. And there are at least two other examples of it on the planet. One is in Africa, and the other one is across Canada itself. But this international effort, and I'm going to share. Come on. Here we go. So do you see a map on the screen? Yes. Okay. Yeah? Do we?
Yes, got a map.
I'm waiting for Billy to shake his head at least. So this map on the screen is a map between Monterrey, Mexico, and San Antonio, Texas. And what is being formed through our compassion work are regions, not just cities of compassion or compassionate cities, but entire regions, right? So between San Antonio and Monterrey, so this makes it international. Yesterday, there was a meeting of all the mayors, not that they all came, but there were 31 there, but mayors between San Antonio and Monterrey. And Monterrey and Nuevo Leon, which is one of our sister cities in San Antonio, they are also a compassionate city, like San Antonio. So the end points, and we're calling this the Camino de la Paz y Compasión. And but the end points are already compassionate cities. So others along the way, Laredo was there yesterday, Pleasanton, Del Rio. So there's even, they were there. But we also had mayors there in between from Mexico. So they are taking steps and becoming compassionate cities and towns and villages and building, just as San Antonio has, building education, community engagement and organizing, community wellness and reconciliation, all those things that we just looked at on the ALI index, but doing that as a region. And now we can think really foundational. And my friend Keith Weidman would say, it's all about relationship. So everything that we're doing as best as we can, internationally, nationally, statewide, and locally, it's building relationship. The transformation comes through relationships. So I almost did it, right? It's 8:33. And I hope you've been writing some things down on your piece of paper. Maybe you wrote nothing, which is fine. The one thing I would encourage you, so I'll start here where I wish to end, is that you think of one step forward on your piece of paper, whatever's there before we sign off on this Zoom, to come up with one step that you're going to do to move that community organizing or engagement forward for yourself. I can't define that for you. Only you can define that. If you're thinking about working on something or working on something by yourself, your first step is to tell somebody else and work with somebody else. Find somebody to be in relationship on that piece of paper. What I'd love to do is then just open this up and hear from people on, what you discovered, one little idea that you didn't have before, what your step might be, anything that's floating around in your head or heart around this morning. So does anybody want to share with us any of those things?
I have something.
Of course, Kimberly. Yay!
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
And I hope everybody's safe and warm. And if you're not, I think there's a bunch of people here you could reach out to. So please do that. It's how this whole thing was formed. I'm just brought back to being a part of this during Snowvid and how much it inspired me. And I just want to say, like, this meeting with you all is what gives me hope, has guided my personal path and my career path. And it is my intention and my assignment at my job at Westcare, Texas, to organize a panel on community organizing. That is in the works. It was brought to me kind of late and over the holidays, but I'm working on the venue. I'm working with Miss Martha Ann as well. And I'm working on the panelists, which I do plan to include Strong Cities as the main speaker. So as soon as I have all the details wrapped up, Anne will be one of the first people that I talk to, per Miss Beverly, but also on my own accord. And we'll share that with you all and would love to have you be a part of that. And so that's where I'm starting. Just thank you all for this space. Thank you, Anne, so much for everything you do. Thank you, Sacred, for being there 24/7. Literally, when we don't have grant funding for programs and resources that people are looking for, you are the first thing out of our mouth every time. I give your cards out at every resource fair that I'm at. So just thank y'all for everything you do, and thank you for this space. And I will communicate that information as soon as I have it all together, which should be in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Thank you, Kimberly. Great example of speaking up and how it all works together. You know, it's such a relational, spiraling, right, kind of thing. Someone else. Just so you know, I have learned the value of patience in silence. There goes Randy. You'll have to open your mic, my dear friend. Randy, we can't hear you yet.
Here we go. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
I had an experience earlier this week. We have CA meetings that go on down at our church, and I usually don't. That is not usually part of my schedule, but I went down there because the custodian of the building is very concerned and anxious about alcoholics and drug addicts, this being a drug group coming into the church, and freaking out that someone's going to hide in a closet or something, and legitimate concerns for people coming into the building to work in it the next day. Anyway, I listened to it, and I listened to them, and they were doing some things that kind of offended me. And then I realized towards the end of it that some of this stuff was going on was just because these folks were so raw and so unused to social situations and unused to groups and so forth, that they were just, it was just in hearing frightening stories. Anyway, towards the end of it, the guy that was chairing the meeting said, if anyone is in this group is homeless, stick around after the meeting was over. And then they had a meeting to talk with people about how they can find shelter and stay off the streets. And it was really interesting to see something that you thought you were coming in for one thing, and then see something totally different proposed. And And then I went to another thing out at Club 12 yesterday, and they have introduced a new version of Alcoholics Anonymous that is called Simple Language, because the original book was written 60 years ago, and a lot of the words are archaic and the terms and so forth are. And this simple language, I bought 3 copies so I could take one of them down there and give to this group tonight. Because you realize when people are reading and they cannot pronounce the words, or they don't know what they're reading, that they can't be understanding what is being presented to them. So I just think about that, and I think, where I live in town is very close to a big homeless camp underneath the highway here, and it's weird to worry about people that you don't know underneath the highway, but I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I've just had thoughts in my mind about people with all the problems that they are personally going through, and then hearing from our soon-to-be administration. They just want to round people up from the streets and get them off the street and fine them and put them in jail. That is not a very optimistic little tale I just told, but I thought I would throw it out there. That's been what's been on my mind.
Well, it's kind of like that chart from the Ali index.
Mhm.
You've just given example, right, of barriers, but also that motivation. I mean, I listened to your story about that group at Madison Square that's meeting, and then the after meeting, about home and shelter. That gives me so much hope that puzzle piece is happening out there. And the other thing it connects to is one of our learnings over these years is that the efforts that have the largest impact are those that both are in geographical proximity to the need, which that example you have, Randy, is, but that they also base their effort on the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the doorway into that group, right? Alcohol, drugs, frankly, that's there on the bottom too. But they ended the meeting with home, shelter. And if I were to go back to that listing of partners that I showed for Good Shepherd Lutheran, which is now all being called the Goliad Road Community of Promise. If I were to go to the other side of that page that I showed you, it's all about food. It's going to be a door hanger, and it's all about food security. All those things that Texas Impact said that Texans are way underutilizing that's available to us. So that, much like your example, if we keep keying in that way into those basic human needs, not only does it give more hope, but it brings more healing and more community. It's 8:44 and we go to 8:45. Thank you all for being here. I hope it was helpful. As always, Sacred powers our times together and records them. I yesterday sent out the recording from last week in the notification, and I've decided to start doing that. So that's there. You could take this session and use it with your teams or whoever, right? And work your way through some of this together. Pausing that recording when you wanted to, or only using a portion of it. So don't forget about that. One of the things Billy and I were talking about before everybody showed up is that we can look at these recordings to see how much people have utilized them. Billy, what was the number one? It was like 30, was it 30 views? And your mic's off. It was 30 views, and what was the session on?
The number one that I found here so far is the homeless house and homelessness briefing by Patrick Streck.
Mhm.
And not
So,
too far
and it
behind that,
had like
Mhm.
30 views or something,
37
right?
views, and right behind that is Myra Montero immigration liaison discussion.
So we can actually then look, right? And people are using those. Peter has his hand up. Peter.
Yes, thank you, Ann. I'll keep it brief. I know we're at the time, but thank you so much for this this session for the whole month. I mean, there's so much that you shared today with the examples. I just wanted to highlight that Goliad example, how detailed you were in sharing the relationship building through that whole process and with the state and the federal. You can tie all those together, but really at the heart of it is really the relationships you build, the geographical proximity level. And I think with the ministries, for myself, I just say really committed to connecting with my geographical proximity much more, and building those relationships to build the capacity within us. I think that's the value that we bring at that level. And then the access to the resources comes naturally, I think, from there, because then we're conduits. So thank you so much. I just think it's very valuable, this whole session of the whole month, and going into Dream Week. It's wonderful. Thank you.
And there are also thank you, Peter, but there's also so many ways to do community organizing, right? You could do all your community organizing through potlucks. You know, there's endless ways. And there are, clear models. Anyway, so next week at 8:46, we're going to again hear from Virginia Mata, who is new at the Archdiocese. I think she started this past November, but she will be leading their social justice efforts. Her PhD is in community organizing here in San Antonio, also connected to Action Research. So I'm very excited that we've got somebody who just recently kind of took a look at us, right? And what did she see? And so I hope you join in next week. Thank you all so much for being committed to community and committed to our city, our compassionate San Antonio. Thank you for being who you are. See you next week at the intersection.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Have a blessed weekend, San Antonio.
And I have a couple people, Billy, you don't have to stay on, but I have a couple people, Narcisse and Julie, that I'm going to meet with for a bit. So like a little
All right.
meeting for a meeting type of thing.
Have a great week.
Here we
I
are.
will
So
talk to you later.
we take what we can get, right? Thanks, Billy.